All right, we're getting started back on the 67 RSSS Camaro now. Finally, it's been a while since we've done anything to it. What I'm going to work on today is getting this tail panel put back on. I've got to look up a few pictures just to see, check on fitment back here in this corner, how it fits along with the quarter panel and everything else. So I just need to see what the gaps look like typically on factory vehicles so I can get it better aligned. I'll flip you around here in a second and kind of show you where we're at. There's been a little bit of damage on the passenger side, and so I've got to make some allowances for that and maybe reshape on the back end of the quarter a little bit, but I won't know that until like I said, do a little more digging on the interwebs and see what I can find. Somebody tried to do a bunch of body work to it and hit a bunch of evils that we didn't see that I'm going to go through and fix. So
I'll show you this back here. We haven't talked about this yet.
a couple small holes here from something.
Whoever did this rear lower valance,
yeah,
and this is a separate part so we can get it. Take a look at what they did.
Oh my God.
So this was all that here. I didn't do
I can see where it's dented in, yeah. So instead of pounding it out,
yeah,
I don't know if you can tell, but let me put my finger across there. Like, that's what they filled in.
It's on both sides. Here's the question, though. Yeah, that is certainly in. This is $80. This piece. So it might be worth just getting it.
It's a lot of getting that, but
look
it's probably less to cut it out and put a new one in than it is to try and do the actual dent repair on this one.
Yeah, there's no reason for it. And it's like it got pushed in, and they did some dent pulling here. You can see.
Yeah, a little bit.
So
they tried.
That's as good as they did. But probably it was hard for them because this is a...
It's fully reinforced all the way along the bottom, yeah.
So we happen to live in a time and place where we can just go get one of these. And all that. I think it's, like you said, I think it's just this piece here. It could be, I don't know, you can get the whole piece too, but, and you can see it fits in here. But this thing is pretty rough. And like I said, there was an inch of Bondo on there. So I cut it out, basically. I excavated it out. Here's where we are now. Probably a good idea. And by the way, there's inner and outer too. So we need to think about that when we look at it. See, the inner is damaged at all. Well,
all right.
So
we found that then. That's a new one.
There's a new one.
Put it up here. Huh? Look at point at me. All right, so right now I'm getting my butt kicked trying to get this stupid tail panel off the back. See, I've got most of it down. This is why. You can see how much Bondo is in there. We're going through and knocking all these spot welds off along this reinforcement piece in the trunk pan, and yeah, we're just splitting them off. So this is how you do it. You know, this is one way to do it. It's how I do it. But all the boys and girls at home, always make sure you sharpen your chisel too. It makes a world of difference. see how this is ground? It's on one edge. I've got a flat side and a ground edge. You tend to want to run the flat edge on the metal you want to save. Push it in this way and it ends up kicking into the metal and out. So you can kind of see that edge. So just grind off one side and kind of keep it mostly sharp. There we go. One metal spaghetti.
No, 30 minutes. 7 minutes.
All right, so you can see what you're left with is, if I can get it to focus. Focus. What you're left with is all of these little nibs and junk, pieces of metal and barbs and stuff sticking out. You have to grind all that stuff down and clean all this back up so you can put your welds back in. I'll have to go back through and reshape this whole piece of metal, weld it all back up, clean it up, and make it look right before I get to any of that stuff, because you can see it was mangled up before I got to it, and me yanking on it and using an air chisel on it probably didn't help matters, but it's mostly intact, or intact enough. If nothing else, I can make it make a pattern out of it and make a new piece or whatever I need to do to make that right. But that's what we got. Let's see, focus in there. There we go. So that whole lower piece is gone, and we're going to replace definitely from there down, maybe the whole thing, don't know yet. All right, I'll bring it back later. All right, the initial fit for the full tail panel is, well, it's abysmal, but I didn't expect any less. It's gonna have to be smacked around and moved and smoothed and all kinds of stuff. So it's gonna take a little work, but old tail panel is just roughly out. I haven't straightened up a bunch of the metal or anything, but I've got it fitted on top here like it should be. And then, yeah, it's going to be a lot of finagling to get all of these pieces to agree and play nice with one another, etc., etc. So as I do that, I'll show you. There were a bunch of spot welds here. There was like 8 or 9 spot welds along this section by the trunk, and 6 or 7 along each side on the inner rear rocker here. The bottom came off pretty easily. As you saw, a bunch of this stuff came off not too bad, but it was still a bit of a fight, but it is out. So my Uncle Vance is here. He's helping. Be a slave driver and just keeps cracking the whip on me, and it's kind of annoying, making me do things. But anyways, that's where we're at with this. Start cleaning stuff up and fitting it and fitting it and fitting it. One thing we did do beforehand is measure from this point to this point, and from this point to this point on both sides, there to there, and make the measurements so that when we go for final fitment, we can measure to what was there, and at least we know we're close, because the trunk lid that was on here looked like it lined up pretty well. So we'll double check. We'll put the trunk lid back on before we nail it down permanently, but that'll get us super close. It was, by the way, within a 32nd of an inch, even with all the damage down here along the bottom. So it was probably as closer than factory ever had it. But anyways, I'll bring you back when I have something more. So I got this piece cut out of the trunk lip here. So I just ended up bending a piece of the old, or the new rocker panel that we didn't use. I just chopped it up and bent some angles in it with the vise and some basic metal. This lip was all destroyed. All of this is pulled apart and was a little bit rusted out. So I cut it back to clean metal, bent it up, and I'm just going to weld this in here super quick and easy. So nothing major, but that'll give me a good, clean, solid place to weld this tail panel onto, because I was running out of junk back here. It was
That's it?
It was all busted up. So anyway, yeah, we're good. This is what I'm talking about. So you can see the factory channel here. I can get this closer up to it, but I've still got this huge gap right here. There's obviously a little bit of fitment here, but what I'm really interested in is finding out what this looks like from the factory along here. I really need to get this set in place, at least held in with some clecos or something, so I can start really shaping in where the damage has occurred, which is back here down along this side. So I think I can get everything pretty close. Everything looks like it's going to fit. Let me show you a little better. Everything looks like it's going to fit pretty well down here once I get this stuff backed in, but I don't know if, oh, let me try this again with the camera where you can see. So you can see where this is off. This part's pushed in a little bit here. So I've got to get the new tail panel pushed in and lining up all the way down this edge. So I just need to see what that looks like on factory cars. I believe it's supposed to be fairly close to flush rather than inset. So on that side, there might be some funkiness going on too. But anyways, I'll bring you back as I start working on it. All right, I've got it fitting pretty well over here. I mean, I've got to re-gap all of this and do some fine tuning and adjustment to get that gap to close up where it needs to be. But that's not a big deal. But if we look up here in the drip rail, you can see there's, I don't know, 3/16 of an inch gap there where this or this isn't shaped correctly. I'll probably have to cut along here and bring that up to it and maybe cut both sides and kind of split the difference here. But look how straight this body line lines up here and how this line fades up and gets thicker to meet that. The issue I'm running into over here is this fade from here is much smaller. You can see that in order to get these close to where they need to be, just how off all of this gets. So I'm probably going to have to reshape this section a little bit. But the problem with that is it's got a 5/8 inch gap now here in the drip rail. You can see how poorly that lines up in order to get this to line up. So this section here may have to get split and stretched a little bit, as well as just checking. I'm going to check corner to corner measurements on all of this stuff here. Sorry about the focus. I'm going to have to check corner to corner measurements and see just how far out or different this corner is to, say, the center of this post. Since I have that post on both sides, I can make a dot and at least get close to seeing how similar or dissimilar the two sides are. So this is the passenger side, that's the driver's side, and they are considerably different in these corners. So that's what's taking so long. I hate aftermarket panels. I wish I hadn't had to chop this section out, but as you saw in the previous shots, I mean, this whole bottom end had been crushed. This was full of Bondo in here. This was rusted out. So there's the whole tail panel was just shot. All right, so I've discovered some of the problem here. I think you can read my writing on there. Let's see if it'll focus. So just under this seams connection right here, I've got 1 1/4 inch from this edge to this inside, this outside edge to this inside edge at the bend here. On this side, I only have 1 1/8 inch, and if I measure from inside that bend at its lowest point, I'm right at 2 inches to that inside bend. And if I come over here and measure from the same point, I'm 2 1/8, 2 3/16. So this panel itself is wider here, and actually this whole section here starts to curve and go up. So what I think I'm gonna have to do is I'm gonna have to add a split here and then tilt this end up just a little bit to get it back in. Or actually, technically, I'm gonna tilt this end out, because if I measure from my trunk lip back, I get the same measurement. We got 18 1/4 there. Well, I'm about 1/8 inch wider over here. I've been banging it around a little bit, but when I get these adjusted in there where this side fits the best, I'm almost identical on my measurements from here to here. So this top edge of the panel seems to be exactly where I need it to be. The entirety of the problem seems to be this panel is actually in, because this section of this panel is smaller than that section right there. Let me fiddle with this some more, see if I can't get it closer to where I want before I start banging on this thing with a hammer too much. And you can see, yeah, there's a little bit of straightening out and stuff to do there where stuff's getting fiddled with, but still have a fairly broad gap there and a fairly broad gap there that has to get addressed. So we'll do all that with sheet metal work. A lot of this stuff I think is going to get Frenched in. So Craig is unfortunately sold this to his brother. I say unfortunately, his brother's going to love it, but he sold this car to his brother, and his brother has tastes that are more in line with mine, so this is going to get a little more custom than it would have been for Craig. So again, a lot of this stuff may get actually fully welded up and shaped in, like a lot of the more modern cars, like you see on a lot of stuff from, like, you know, the Ken Diggett and the Ring Brothers and stuff. They weld a lot of, especially this lower section, it's fully welded and sealed and then body worked over so that it's smooth on the bottom. I think a lot of them leave this line, some of them don't, but we'll see. I got to talk to him before I fully weld this thing in, what he wants to do on that. Some pretty interesting stuff coming for the body work on this as well, and the final finish on what he's going to do, but that's months away, so we'll leave that as a surprise. I'm going to tell you this, probably not anyone out there with what we're going to do. So here is, I found exactly, I believe, what is going on. If I lay this piece of flat bar across there, you can see this does have a slight crown to it, something, you know, less than an 1/8 inch there going across the side. But if I lay this all the way into the corner over here, you can see just how big that gap is. So 3/16 of an inch or something. So it's quite a bit bigger. So this does confirm that this entire corner is sucked in. I mean, there's still like a 1/2 inch gap over here, so getting, you know, 3/16 back's not going to get me all the way, but I think this is improperly shaped, so this needs some more shaping in here, which might get me close if I split the difference between the two. Like, I can redo this section of body work here, get that all tied in together. But yeah, this whole section, like if we come down here, sorry for the weird angles, and you see I'm kind of packed in here with my welder, but if you look down that here, and it's probably hard to tell on the video, but by eye I can see that this corner over here just completely dives in. So I'm gonna have to split all this up here on this third of the top and let that ease itself back out, and then reshape the top of this panel. That's gonna suck, but it will have to get done, because that's the only way to, yeah, I mean, if I'm looking down this angle here on this corner, or is it, you can see this corner here, and you can see about midway it just dives into that corner. So that whole thing, probably from, say, midpoint right above the filler cap, probably gonna have to split it right inside this line here, or just above it, and just let that whole side ease itself back out where it needs to be, and then I'll have to come back in and fill and finish this top. That's gonna suck. Part of the problem I'm gonna run into is this taillight bracket. It's spot welded above and below the point that I need to cut, which is actually down in here, which means I couldn't dress the inside of this weld with this in the way. And as long as this is, I could just cut these spot welds along this top edge. This is the trunk side, this is your lower valance side, this is down the bottom. I could just separate this section along the top here, and then that would give me the ability to move these sections fore and aft. And actually I could cut it in such a way as that I don't need to do anything with that, but again, I still couldn't dress the back, so I'm debating on whether or not I want to take this off or not. I'm gonna have to remove this section at the very least, because this is attached to the part that needs to move forward, needs to go that way. So this section right here is gonna be pushing against that, so I'm gonna have to bend this a little bit, or move this bend along here. So I'm thinking it needs to just go ahead and come off ultimately, which is kind of a pain, but is what it is. All right, so I've gone along. This is the top side, trunk side, bottom side, just upside down right now. Gone through and drilled out these spot welds. I'll do whatever repair I need to do on those to get that back together, but now we can see that's loose there. And if I can, with one hand, put that up. I also separated the 4 that were right along this side. So now you can see it's all separated, which means I can pull this top part out when I cut along here, along this. So anyways, easy cheesy. On second thought, I went ahead and just took the whole part off. That'll be a lot easier to clean these holes up and make it all look pretty. So I can go ahead and weld this up and separately from this and hide all the extra drilling and spot welds that I've taken out. So that's what I've done, completely removed it. So this whole front face will move forward in relation, and I went ahead and taped off my cut line along the top. I'm going to cut it on this side right in the middle of that flat part, because the flat part will just be the easiest part to weld and to clamp and keep straight and everything else. So there we go, that's what I'm doing right now. As you can see, nothing pretty, just a few tacks along the way, just so that I know that this isn't going to shift or bend too bad along the way. And like I said, I will pull this off, because I've still got to cut this out and pull this corner out a little bit, but I wanted to make sure this was all locked into place before I start doing that. I'm gonna get everything kind of tacked where I want it, and then get it locked back into the car. Then I'll come back and start doing a bunch of the finish welding before. But I want this to be a nice, solid, pretty painted piece before, well, at least sealed and primed piece before I get it fully welded into the car. I want all my finish work done, because it's going to be hard to get in here and grind that from inside the trunk and all that kind of stuff. So I want to just kind of tack everything like I want it. I'll do the bulk of the welding in the car. I'll do any finish welding and finish cleanup outside the car. Then I'll get it back in and spot weld it back into place, and then we'll continue down to the what's left of the quarter repairs on this side. All right, so I've got this set back up in here. There's quite a bit of gap now, where this used to be all the way up against here. There's quite a large gap. I mean, I can fit this 3/6 screwdriver all the way in there. I'm gonna say it's a little bit more than 1/8 of an inch. And I've clamped it inside here to get this top part in. I'm gonna use this to kind of adjust my angles to square everything out along here. And then the same thing, I'll pry off of here, bring this piece down in line as I weld along this section. It's going to get just a touch thicker, but that's okay, like I said. But this will get all of this nice and flat where it needs to be, and that brings this whole face needed to come out to get to be where it's very similar to the passenger side, which I like the way it fits. So that's what we're going to do right now, is weld this up. Much better. I haven't changed the curvature here, and it's still matching up to the original quarter very nicely. So I'll just throw a couple of tacks on the inside there, and we'll call that good. like I said, I'll weld that up fully from with the part out of the car, and that way I can dress it all up really nice inside and out. But for right now, this is just kind of slicing, and this whole section kind of had to splay out because this was pinched in, and the entire shape is narrower on this end than it is on the passenger side. So not only did I just have to make one slice here to get the overall width right, but I'm having to slice a second one and slowly bring this part out and this part out. And I may have to bring another part out and spread that out and then fill in the gaps so that this shape, because I have at least one more cut, both in the original here and in the aftermarket piece here. I'm going to have to reshape this piece so that these two angles right here split the difference, because right now there's a 1/4 inch gap where the curvature of this drip rail just basically goes straight instead of curving up to meet the factory curve. So just take care of all that as it goes. Everybody's wondering, I'm using my favorite welder here, the Yes Welder MIG 205 DS, MIG, TIG, and stick. Works great, it's buttery smooth. It's a better welder than I am, so I'm certain I don't do anything near what it's fully capable of, but for what I do, works great. So, as mangled as that looks up there, this piece right here fits in and now makes the curve to go up there. I've got a little piece made just off some scrap to fit in there. That, better camera work. Got a piece made to fit in there that'll get me where I need it to be. So I'm going to take this out and weld that in and finish trimming it off to fit, and then this thing will be ready to fix all this ugliness, get it all welded up and ground out, all that fun stuff. So anyways, I'll bring you back for that. I had to cut it here because that was too far in, so I had to give it an 1/8 inch gap here. I had to do a 1/4 inch gap here that tapered all the way to the center, and then I had to flange this part out to meet it to fit, so I'll have to reshape that. This is the crazy crap you have to do when you buy these crappy import panels. And yeah, it's all ugly. It's just spot weld, spot weld, spot weld, spot weld. All kinds of craziness. The other side's already ground off roughly, filling in the back here for added strength. I'll clean it up mostly. I'll leave a little bit there just so that it has some backfill on it, just to give it good rigidity. But anyways, just welding and grinding and welding to fix this stupid import tail panel. Nobody wants to know the part number. It's upside down, but there it is. That's what it is. 1/2 inch or more off on this end, maybe 3/4. All those ugly welds on the back give good, nice penetration all the way down though. So things looking good. Got a lot of this stuff kind of ground down and cleaned up.